The autumn breeze swept through downtown Atlanta as Keisha Williams hurried up the steps of the Carter Community Center. She was already 15 minutes late for the annual fundraiser, and as a social worker, she knew how important these community events were. Her heels clicked against the marble floor as she adjusted her name tag, trying to catch her breath. The large hall was filled with the usual crowd: local business owners, community leaders, and fellow social workers. Soft jazz music played in the background as people mingled around tables decorated with fall-themed centerpieces. Keisha spotted her colleague Sarah waving from across the room. "Girl, I thought you weren't going to make it," Sarah said, handing Keisha a glass of water. "Traffic was crazy on I-85, Keisha explained, grateful for the drink. "Did I miss anything important?" Before Sarah could answer, there was a small commotion near the refreshment table. A man in a wheelchair had accidentally knocked over an empty glass, and people were awkwardly trying to help while he insisted he could manage. Keisha noticed how everyone seemed uncomfortable, either staring too much or pretending not to notice at all. Without hesitation, she walked over and picked up the glass. "These tables are way too high anyway," she said casually, placing it back on the table. The man looked up at her with warm brown eyes and a grateful smile. "Thanks for acting like it's no big deal," he said, "because it really isn't." "I'm Keisha," she introduced herself, noticing his well-tailored suit and friendly face. "Michael Bennett," he responded, extending his hand. "I'd bow, but you know," he joked, making her laugh instantly. As they talked, Keisha learned that Michael worked as an IT consultant for major companies. He spoke with passion about making technology more accessible for everyone, and his eyes lit up when discussing his latest projects. What struck her most was how he made her feel completely at ease, cracking jokes about his wheelchair when others might have tiptoed around the subject. "So, what brings a corporate tech guy to a community center fundraiser?" Keisha asked, genuinely curious. Michael's expression turned thoughtful. "Growing up with a disability, places like this were my lifeline," he explained. "Now that I can give back, I make sure I do." The evening continued, and Keisha found herself spending most of her time talking with Michael. They discovered they both loved old-school R&B music, had a weakness for spicy food, and shared the same dry sense of humor. When he talked about his family, especially his mother who had raised him alone, Keisha saw the same values she held dear reflected in his words. Several people at the event gave them curious looks. Keisha noticed some whispering and pointing, but for the first time in her life, she didn't care what others thought. There was something about Michael that made everything else fade into the background. As the event wound down, Michael hesitated before asking, "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" Keisha felt her heart skip a beat. Dating hadn't been her priority lately, focused as she was on her career, and if she was honest with herself, she had never considered dating someone with a disability. But there was something special about Michael that made her want to know more. "I'd like that," she said, entering her number into his phone. As she watched him navigate his wheelchair toward the exit, she felt Sarah's presence beside her. "Girl, are you sure about this?" Sarah whispered, concern evident in her voice. "He seems nice, but you know it won't be easy." Keisha watched as Michael skillfully maneuvered through the crowd, greeting people with genuine warmth. "Since when has anything worth having been easy?" she replied, surprising herself with her conviction. That night, as Keisha drove home, she couldn't stop thinking about Michael's smile and the way he made her laugh. She had gone to the fundraiser expecting another routine networking event. Instead, she had met someone who challenged her perspectives and touched her heart in unexpected ways. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her beliefs, change her life, and lead to the biggest surprise she could never have imagined. 2 weeks after the fundraiser, Keisha sat at her favorite coffee shop, nervously checking her phone. She and Michael had been texting daily, but this would be their first real date. Her friends' concerned voices echoed in her head. Even her mother had questioned her judgment when she mentioned Michael. The bell above the door chimed, and Michael entered, navigating his wheelchair smoothly through the tables. Keisha noticed how other customers stared, some quickly looking away when caught. But Michael's confident smile never wavered as he approached her table. "I hope you haven't been waiting long," he said, positioning himself across from her. "Though I did get stuck behind a group of teenagers who seemed to forget wheelchair users exist." He laughed, but Keisha felt a flash of anger at people's thoughtlessness. Their coffee date turned into a 3-hour conversation. Michael told her about growing up with muscular dystrophy, about his dreams of creating his own tech company, and about the challenges he faced daily. Keisha shared stories about her work with troubled teens, her close-knit family, and her passion for helping others. As weeks passed, their relationship grew stronger. Keisha learned the small things: how Michael preferred to open doors himself when possible, how he could drive using special controls in his car, and how capable he was in ways many people never imagined. But she also faced new challenges she hadn't expected. One evening, while having dinner at a restaurant, the waiter addressed only Keisha, asking what he would like to order. Michael handled it gracefully, but later confessed how often people treated him as invisible or assumed he couldn't speak for himself. "It used to make me angry," he told her as they drove home. "Now I just see it as a chance to educate people. Sometimes they just don't know better." Keisha's family proved to be another hurdle. During Sunday dinner at her parents' house, her mother pulled her aside in the kitchen. "Baby, I know you have a big heart," she said, keeping her voice low. "But have you really thought about what you're getting into? Taking care of someone for the rest of your life?" "Mama, Michael doesn't need someone to take care of him," Keisha replied firmly. "He needs what we all need, someone to love him for who he is." Her younger brother Marcus was more direct. "Sis, people are talking," he said one day. "They think you're settling or that you're with him out of pity." The words stung, but they also made Keisha realize how much she had changed. The woman who had walked into that fundraiser 2 months ago might have shared those concerns. Now, she saw things differently. One afternoon, while helping Michael run errands, they encountered a broken elevator at the mall. The maintenance worker suggested they come back another time. Keisha watched in admiration as Michael calmly but firmly explained the Americans with Disabilities Act to the worker and mall manager, who quickly found a solution. "How do you stay so patient?" she asked him afterward. Michael took her hand. "Getting angry rarely changes minds," he said. "But showing people a different way of thinking, that can change the world." Their relationship wasn't without its awkward moments. The first time they tried to kiss, they had to figure out the right angle with his wheelchair. They both ended up laughing, and somehow that made it even more special. Physical intimacy required open communication and creativity, but Keisha found their connection deeper because of it. Some of her coworkers stopped inviting her to social gatherings, claiming venues weren't wheelchair accessible. Others questioned if she could have a normal relationship. But for every person who pulled away, Keisha discovered new friends who saw beyond Michael's disability to the amazing man he was. As their 3rd month of dating approached, Keisha realized something profound. She wasn't dealing with dating someone with a disability. She was simply dating the man she was falling in love with. Michael's wheelchair was just part of who he was, like his brilliant mind, his kind heart, and his terrible puns that made her laugh despite herself. What she didn't know was that their relationship was about to face its biggest test, one that had nothing to do with his disability and everything to do with a secret he had been keeping since the day they met. The spring air was crisp as Keisha and Michael celebrated their 1-year anniversary at the same community center where they first met. Michael had insisted on returning there, saying he had something special planned. Keisha noticed he seemed nervous, his hands fidgeting with his wheelchair controls more than usual. "Remember that spot where I knocked over the glass?" Michael asked, guiding his chair to the exact location. Keisha smiled at the memory. "How could I forget? It was the best knocked-over glass of my life." What happened next took her breath away. Michael pressed a button on his wheelchair, and to her amazement, it slowly raised him into a standing position. He had been secretly practicing with this new wheelchair technology for months. Though still supported by the chair, he was nearly at eye level with her. "Keisha Williams," he said, his voice shaking slightly as he pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. "This past year has taught me that love doesn't see limitations. It sees possibilities. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Keisha's face as she nodded, unable to speak. As Michael slipped the ring on her finger, their small audience of close friends and family burst into applause. They had all been in on the surprise. However, the joy of their engagement was quickly tested by the reactions of others. Wedding planning became a battlefield of opinions and judgments. The first wedding planner they met with kept directing all questions to Keisha, suggesting simple ceremonies that wouldn't be too complicated for Michael. "We want a real wedding," Keisha insisted, holding Michael's hand. with dancing, celebrating, and everything other couples have. They found a new planner who shared their vision and understood their needs. Keisha's mother, though initially hesitant, slowly came around after spending more time with Michael. She was particularly moved when she saw how he mentored young people with disabilities through an online support group. "That man has more strength in his spirit than most people I know," she finally admitted to Keisha. "I was wrong about him, baby. Love like yours doesn't come along every day." Not everyone was as understanding. Some of Keisha's relatives refused to attend the wedding, claiming it would be uncomfortable or inappropriate. Their absence hurt, but it also showed the couple who truly supported their love. Michael's family was smaller, just his mother and a few cousins, but they welcomed Keisha with open arms. His mother Sandra pulled her aside at the engagement party. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging Keisha tightly. "Not for loving my son despite his disability, but for loving all of him, wheelchair and all." The wedding day arrived on a beautiful Saturday in June. They had chosen an accessible venue with a lovely garden. Michael wore a custom-tailored suit, and Keisha was radiant in a gown that complemented his wheelchair rather than trying to hide it. During the ceremony, they had written their own vows. Michael spoke about how Keisha saw him as a whole person when others saw only his limitations. Keisha talked about how Michael's strength and determination had taught her what true courage meant. "I promise to be not just your wife," she said, her voice clear and strong, "but your partner in every sense of the word. To face whatever challenges come our way together, to celebrate every victory, and to always see the man I fell in love with first." Their first dance was a carefully choreographed moment that incorporated Michael's wheelchair, turning what some might see as an obstacle into a beautiful part of their celebration. Keisha twirled around him as he spun his chair in perfect rhythm to their favorite song. As they cut the cake together, Keisha caught glimpses of their guests. Some were wiping away tears, while others watched with newfound understanding of what true love could look like. Later that night, as they shared a quiet moment alone, Michael touched her cheek gently. "Are you ready for this journey?" he asked. "It won't always be easy." Keisha leaned down to kiss him. "I'm ready for our journey," she corrected. "And that's all that matters." What Keisha didn't know was that their wedding day marked not just the beginning of their marriage, but the start of a series of events that would lead to the biggest revelation of her life. Michael's secret was still safely hidden, but not for much longer. 6 months into their marriage, Keisha sat at their kitchen table late at night, surrounded by bills and receipts. The harsh light of her laptop screen showed their bank account balance, much lower than she'd expected. Between Michael's medical expenses, wheelchair maintenance, and their mortgage payments on their accessible home, their savings were dwindling fast. Michael wheeled into the kitchen, noticing the worry lines on his wife's face. "Still working on the budget?" he asked softly. Keisha tried to close the laptop, not wanting to add to his stress, but he had already seen her expression. "The insurance denied the claim for your new wheelchair parts again," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "And the house modifications cost more than we planned." The ramps, wider doorways, and specially fitted bathroom had eaten through their wedding savings faster than either of them anticipated. Michael's face fell. Though he had a good job in it consulting, the medical expenses were constant. Last month, they had to replace the special controls in his car after they malfunctioned, adding another unexpected bill to their growing pile. "I can pick up extra shifts at the crisis center," Keisha suggested, though they both knew she was already working overtime. "Or maybe we could delay the bathroom renovation." "No," Michael interrupted firmly. "You're already working too hard, and that bathroom isn't safe for me as it is. There has to be another way." He stared at his phone for a moment, as if debating something, then quickly put it away. Their financial stress began affecting other parts of their life. Keisha started skipping lunch to save money, and Michael canceled his physical therapy sessions, claiming he could do the exercises at home. Their date nights became rare, replaced by quiet evenings watching TV and trying not to think about bills. One evening, while Keisha was working late, she overheard two colleagues whispering in the break room. "Poor Keisha," one said. "She must have known what she was getting into, marrying someone with such expensive needs." The other replied, "I heard they're barely making ends meet. Love doesn't pay the bills, does it?" Keisha walked away, fighting back tears. She loved Michael more than anything, but the constant financial pressure was taking its toll. What hurt most was seeing how it affected him, The guilt in his eyes every time a new bill arrived, the way he apologized for things that weren't his fault. Michael noticed changes too. Keisha wasn't sleeping well, often staying up late to look for additional freelance work. She was losing weight from skipping meals, though she tried to hide it. He watched her put on a brave face every morning, but he could see the strain behind her smile. The breaking point came when their car needed repairs again. As they sat in the mechanic's office, listening to the estimated cost, Keisha felt her chest tighten. Without reliable transportation, Michael couldn't get to work independently, but they barely had enough in their account to cover rent. That night, Michael found Keisha crying in their bedroom. "Maybe my family was right," she sobbed. "Not about you, never about you, but about how hard this would be. I just don't know how to fix this." Michael wheeled closer, taking her hand. "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "I'm working on something that might help." There was an odd note in his voice that Keisha was too upset to notice. Later that week, while organizing their home office for potential items to sell, Keisha discovered a stack of papers hidden behind Michael's old files. The letterhead caught her eye. Elite Connections Escort Service. Her heart stopped as she began to read. The documents weren't what she expected. They weren't bills or client papers, but something far more surprising. As she read further, her hands began to shake. This couldn't be right. The implications of what she was reading would change everything. Just then, she heard Michael's wheelchair in the hallway. Keisha quickly put the papers back, her mind racing. Was this what he had been hiding? Was this why he sometimes got mysterious phone calls late at night? She needed answers, but she wasn't sure she was ready for them. What she didn't realize was that the truth would be far different, and far bigger than anything she could imagine. For 3 days after finding the escort service documents, Keisha barely slept. She watched Michael closely, looking for signs, trying to understand. His late-night phone calls, mysterious meetings, and occasional unexplained absences suddenly took on new meaning. The strain of keeping her discovery secret showed in her face. "Are you feeling okay?" Michael asked one morning, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. "You've been quiet lately." Keisha forced a smile and mumbled something about work stress, but her mind was screaming with questions. That evening, while preparing dinner, Keisha's hands shook so badly she dropped a plate. As it shattered on the floor, something inside her broke too. She couldn't keep pretending anymore. "I found the papers, Michael," she said quietly, not turning to face him. The silence that followed seemed endless. When she finally looked at him, his face had gone pale. "Which papers?" he asked, though his expression told her he already knew. "Elite Connections Escort Service," Keisha said, her voice trembling. "Is that why we're always struggling with money? Are you spending our savings on?" She couldn't finish the sentence. Michael wheeled closer, reaching for her hand, but she stepped back. "Keisha, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice rose. "Explain how you've been lying to me. How you've been hiding this." Tears streamed down her face. "I've been killing myself working extra shifts, skipping meals, worrying about every penny, while you've been—" "It's not what you think," Michael interrupted, his voice urgent. "Yes, I've been keeping secrets. And yes, it involves elite connections, but not in the way you imagine." Keisha grabbed her purse, heading for the door. "I need some air," she said. But Michael moved his wheelchair to block her path. "Please, just look at the papers again," he pleaded. "Really look at them this time." With shaking hands, Keisha pulled the documents from her purse where she'd been carrying them, afraid to leave them at home. This time, she forced herself to read beyond the letterhead. Her eyes widened. These weren't client receipts or appointment schedules. They were business ownership documents, tax forms, and financial statements. Elite Connections wasn't just an escort service. It was a high-end matchmaking agency specializing in connecting people with disabilities to potential partners who could see beyond physical limitations. "I don't understand," she whispered, looking at the numbers. The company's revenue figures made her dizzy. "These amounts?" "I started Elite Connections 5 years ago," Michael explained softly. "After years of being treated like my disability made me unlovable, I wanted to create a safe space for people like me to find real connections. It began as a small matchmaking service, but grew into something bigger." Keisha sank into a chair, her legs weak. "But the financial struggles? Our bills. I've been living on my consultant salary because I wanted you to love me for me, not my money, Michael said, moving closer. I was afraid if you knew about my business, you might think I was trying to buy love, or that you might question if people only tolerated my disability because of my wealth. The papers trembled in Keisha's hands as she read further. Elite Connections had offices in 3 cities, employed over 50 people, and had helped create hundreds of successful relationships. The company's bank statements showed millions in revenue. All those late-night calls, she began. Client emergencies, staff issues in different time zones, Michael explained. I handle them personally because I know how vulnerable our clients feel. The mysterious meetings. Board meetings, investor calls. The consulting job was my cover, but it's also real. I never wanted to lie to you completely. Keisha's mind raced through the past months. Their financial struggles, her extra shifts, the guilt in Michael's eyes whenever they discussed money. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Because the last woman I dated before you left when she found out about my wealth. She said she couldn't handle the pressure of being with someone so successful, especially someone with a disability. She thought people would assume she was after my money. Keisha stood up slowly, her emotions a mix of relief, confusion, and hurt. The truth was better than what she'd feared, but the lies still stung. As she looked at her husband, she realized this wasn't the end of their conversation. It was just the beginning of a much bigger discussion about trust, honesty, and the future they would build together. Keisha sat on their living room couch, surrounded by more documents Michael had retrieved from his home office. Financial statements, business plans, and success stories from Elite Connections covered the coffee table. Each paper revealed another layer of her husband's secret life as a successful businessman. The company started in my garage, Michael explained, wheeling back and forth nervously. I was tired of dating sites that either ignored people with disabilities or treated us like we needed pity matches, so I created something different. He pulled up a sleek website on his tablet and handed it to Keisha. The homepage showed diverse couples, many including people with various disabilities, all sharing genuine moments of connection. No sad stories, no inspiration porn, just real people finding love. At first, it was just me and a part-time assistant, Michael continued. We focused on creating meaningful connections, understanding that disability is just one part of who someone is. Word spread, and suddenly we had waiting lists. Keisha scrolled through testimonials from happy couples. But why keep struggling with our bills when you had all this? Her voice cracked. I've been so worried about money, Michael. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Before I met you, I dated someone named Rachel. When she found out about my wealth, everything changed. She started showing me off like I was some kind of inspiration story, the successful disabled man. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about my money and her image as the noble girlfriend. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Then I met you at that fundraiser. You picked up that glass I knocked over like it was nothing. You saw me, just me. For the first time, I felt like someone was interested in Michael the person, not Michael the disabled millionaire. Keisha remembered their early dates, how Michael always insisted on splitting bills, how he never flaunted expensive things. So you pretended to struggle financially to test me? No, Michael wheeled closer, taking her hand. I wanted our love to grow naturally, without money complicating things. I kept thinking, just one more month, then I'll tell her. But the longer I waited, the harder it became to find the right moment. He pulled up more documents showing Elite Connections' impact, scholarships for disabled students, accessibility programs they funded, and support groups they sponsored. Every time you worked extra shifts, it killed me inside, but I was terrified of losing what we had. Keisha's eyes widened at a recent bank statement. These numbers. Michael, you're not just successful, you're worth about $20 million, he finished quietly. The company keeps growing. We're opening offices in Europe next year. The revelation hit Keisha like a wave. All those nights she'd stayed awake worried about bills, all the extra shifts at the crisis center, all the cheap meals and missed outings, none of it had been necessary. Those business trips to Chicago and Boston, she asked. Board meetings with investors. The consulting job was real, but it was just a cover for my main business. And all those late-night phone calls? Running a global matchmaking service means being available across time zones. Many of our clients feel vulnerable sharing their stories, so I handle sensitive cases personally. Keisha stood up, needing to move. The past 6 months of their marriage played through her mind like a movie, every scene now colored differently by this new information. I understand wanting to be loved for yourself, she said slowly. But marriages are built on trust, Michael. You let me worry and stress when you could have helped. Michael nodded, guilt written across his face. I know. My fear of losing you made me forget that protecting you was just as important as being honest with you. I got so caught up in proving our love was real that I created a different kind of problem. He reached for a leather portfolio on his desk. I want to show you everything, our real finances, the company's future plans, all of it. No more secrets. You're my wife, and you deserve to know the whole truth about the man you married. As Keisha sat back down to look through the portfolio, she realized their marriage was about to change dramatically. The question was, would this revelation strengthen their bond, or had the months of deception created a crack that couldn't be repaired? The next morning, Keisha called in sick to work for the first time in her career. She sat in their sunlit kitchen, drinking coffee and trying to process everything she had learned. The stack of financial documents Michael had given her sat untouched beside her. Across the table, Michael watched her anxiously. Neither had slept much the night before. The weight of his revelation hung between them like a heavy curtain. I keep thinking about that broken elevator at the mall, Keisha finally said, breaking the silence. You handled it so calmly, educated them about disability rights. All this time, you could have just bought the whole building and fixed it yourself. Michael managed a small smile. Money doesn't always solve problems the right way. Sometimes people need to learn and change on their own. Like you were waiting for me to learn and change? Keisha's voice held an edge, testing whether I would stay despite our financial struggles. That's not fair, Michael protested, but then stopped himself. Actually, maybe it is fair. I was so focused on protecting myself that I didn't see how much I was hurting you. Keisha opened one of the financial folders. Page after page showed charitable donations to disability organizations, scholarships for students with disabilities, funding for accessibility projects. All done anonymously through elite connections. You've helped so many people, she said softly. Why hide this part of yourself? Because people treat you differently when they know you have money, Michael replied. They either want something from you, or they assume you think you're better than them. Add a disability to that mix, and suddenly you're either a charity case or an inspiration story. Never just a person. Keisha remembered the whispers and stares they got when they first started dating. How people assumed she was Michael's caregiver rather than his girlfriend. How some friends stopped inviting them places, claiming venues weren't accessible. I understand why you kept it secret at first, she said. But I'm your wife now. We promised to share everything, good and bad. Michael wheeled closer to her. Last night, I couldn't sleep thinking about all the times you skipped lunch to save money. How you took extra shifts until you were exhausted. I let my fear of losing you cause exactly the kind of pain I wanted to avoid. Keisha felt tears forming. You know what hurts most? Not the secret itself, but that you didn't trust me enough to tell me. After everything we've been through, all the judgment and criticism we faced together, you still didn't believe in us enough. I believed in you, Michael said quickly. I didn't believe in myself. Every time I thought about telling you, I remembered Rachel parading me around like her good deed for the day. The thought of seeing that same change in your eyes, I couldn't bear it. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Finally, Keisha spoke. I need time, Michael. Not to decide if I still love you. I do. But to process everything. To understand who we are now, that this secret isn't between us. Michael nodded slowly. Whatever you need. Just, please don't shut me out. I won't, Keisha promised. But things need to change. No more secrets. No more pretending to be something we're not. And no more watching me struggle when you could help. She picked up her phone and looked at her overtime schedule for the crisis center. I love my work, but I've been killing myself taking extra shifts we didn't need. That stops now. What do you want to do? Michael asked softly. Keisha thought about all the clients she'd had to turn away from the crisis center due to limited resources. About the families struggling with disabilities who couldn't afford proper care. about the community centers cutting programs due to lack of funding. "I want to help people," she said firmly. "Not because we have money, but because it's who we are. Both of us. No more hiding our ability to make a difference." Michael reached for her hand, relief flooding his face when she didn't pull away. They both knew their marriage would need time to heal from the months of deception. But as they sat together in their sunny kitchen, they also knew they had been given an opportunity to build something bigger than themselves. What they didn't realize was that their biggest challenge, and their greatest opportunity, was still to come. 1 month after Michael's revelation, Keisha sat in a therapist's office, holding her husband's hand. It had been his idea to seek couples counseling to rebuild their foundation of trust. The past few weeks had been a journey of healing, understanding, and transformation. Money doesn't fix everything, Dr. Martinez, their therapist, had told them in their first session, but honesty can heal almost anything. Those words became their guiding light as they worked through their issues. Slowly, they began building a new life together, one without secrets. Michael showed Keisha everything about Elite Connections, introducing her to his staff, sharing client success stories, and involving her in decisions about the company's future. "I have an idea," Keisha said one evening after meeting another happy couple who had found love through Elite Connections. "What if we created a foundation? Something that combines your business success with my social work experience?" Michael's eyes lit up. "What kind of foundation?" "One that helps couples where one or both partners have disabilities. Not just with finding love, but with building a life together. Help with medical expenses, home modifications, specialized equipment, all the things we pretended to struggle with." The idea took shape quickly. They called it the Beyond Barriers Foundation, and within weeks, they were helping couples navigate the challenges they had faced themselves. Keisha left her crisis center job to run the foundation full-time, though she still volunteered there regularly. Their first success story was a young couple, James, who used a wheelchair like Michael, and Sarah, who loved him but worried about their future. The foundation helped them modify their home, covered medical expenses, and provided counseling to address their fears. "Remember when this was us?" Keisha asked Michael as they watched James and Sarah move into their newly accessible home. "Scared about money, worried about the future?" Michael squeezed her hand. "Now we get to be the help we wished we had." Their marriage grew stronger through their work together. Keisha's understanding of disability issues deepened, while Michael learned to be more open and vulnerable. They still faced challenges. People who questioned their motives, family members who treated them differently after learning about their wealth. But they faced everything as true partners. The foundation expanded rapidly. They opened support centers in major cities, offering everything from financial assistance to relationship counseling. Elite Connections continued its matchmaking services, but now with additional resources to help couples succeed long-term. 1 year after Michael's revelation, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony. This time, there were no secrets between them, no hidden worries about money. Instead, they celebrated with couples they had helped, surrounded by a community they had built together. "I was so afraid of losing you," Michael admitted during their vow renewal. "I didn't realize that hiding part of myself was pushing you away more than any truth could have." Keisha touched his cheek gently. "And I was so focused on proving I could handle everything that I forgot marriage means sharing our burdens and our blessings." Their story began spreading, inspiring others. But this time, it wasn't about a black woman marrying a disabled man or about hidden wealth and secrets revealed. It was about two people who learned that true love means accepting all parts of each other, the struggles and the successes, the disabilities and the abilities, the fears and the dreams. As they cut their renewal cake, surrounded by happy faces and grateful hearts, Keisha looked at her husband and smiled. The journey hadn't been easy, but every step had led them here, to a place where they could help others find the kind of love they shared. "Ready for our next adventure?" Michael asked, his eyes twinkling. Keisha leaned down to kiss him. "With you, always." Their story wasn't just about a surprise at an escort service anymore. It had become something much bigger, a testament to love's power to overcome fear, to heal wounds, and to change lives. Through their foundation and their example, they showed the world that true love isn't about what you can or can't do, how much money you have, or what challenges you face. It's about seeing the whole person, accepting them completely, and choosing to face life's journey together, no matter what surprises it might bring. The end.